Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to take a moment of your time. My name is Bree Burks, and I am part of the Site Solutions team here at Viva. We are partnering with Black women in clinical research and my friend Danielle Mitchell in two ways. First, we're partnering to provide awesome career opportunities. Look out for upcoming lunch and learns or visit careers.viva.com to learn more. And second, to make you aware of a free application available to sites. SiteVault helps CRCs and CRAs work better together by helping sites go paperless and provide a great remote monitoring experience. It's great for sites because it can be used across all studies and it's 100% free. There are no strings attached. And Viva provides validation and support from a dedicated team of former clinical research professionals. It's great for CRAs because it provides a seamless experience for remote monitoring with a single login across all sites. SiteVault is connecting more than 5,000 sites on the same platform used today by more than 400 industry sponsors. Tell your sites to learn more and to sign up at sites.viva.com.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Danielle Mitchell. I am the CEO and founder of Black Women in Clinical Research. Tonight, we are going to be talking about quality assurance. And before we get started, I'm going to introduce my host. Andrika, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Good evening, everyone. I am Andrika Thomas. I am a clinical project manager, also the creative director for Black Women in Clinical Research, and I also do negotiation services and interview prep. So that's me. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you, Andrika. Courtney, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Courtney Smith Troxler Barnes. I am a CRA apprentice with PPD, part of Thermo Fisher, and a active and very, very, very interested member of Black Women in Clinical Research.
Thank you, Courtney. And I would like to introduce our speakers, Notorious.
I'm Notorious. I live in the Raleigh-Durham area. I am currently a senior manager of quality assurance.
Thank you. And Bridget.
Hello, Bridget Shapatal here. I currently serve as a manager of quality assurance and regulatory affairs.
Thank you. I'm over here like, why didn't I choose my background? Everybody has a background and I it's okay. I'll keep this background tonight. Okay, so let's dive in. What exactly we're going to dive into? What is quality assurance? So I will start first. What role does quality assurance play in clinical research? Notorious, would you like to start us off, please?
Sure. So quality assurance is in clinical trials, at least, is like basically conducting like planned and systemic activities. Basically, we're auditing the studies to make sure that you're following the guidelines and regulations and adhering to the good clinical practices that we all, agreed to do when we decided that we were going to do clinical research.
Okay, thank you. Bridget.
Yeah, just to kind of follow up on what Notorious was saying, I mean, quality assurance is basically the foundation of research to me. It plays such a critical role in making sure that research is conducted in a consistent way, in a way that is ethical, making sure that you're getting accurate data collection, and that you're able to analyze that data. So, this makes research safe for study participants, and really just make sure that all of the information that we're collecting, as we're undergoing this effort is going to be accurate and it's going to be valid. So to me, quality assurance is that the foundation is every single thing that we do as research professionals.
Thank you,
And I
Bridget.
just want to make sure, does everybody understand the difference between quality assurance and quality control? Because I think people often get those confused.
Go ahead, Notorious, you can.
Okay. QA is more like a kind of like what Bridget was saying, you can build your clinical trials by, quality design. So you have processes that you put in place to make sure that the trial runs consistently, adheres to guidelines. So they would be responsible for like writing SOPs, responsible for doing like internal audits to make sure that you're following GCP things, and then quality, and it's more of like a preventive action. So if you have these plans in place and you follow them, then everything should go accordingly. Versus quality control is more so kind of checking the final product for any defects that happen. So you will go in, verify the data, you see that there's something wrong, you issue a query. So that's more so quality control.
Okay, and hats off to you guys, because I mean, I didn't like audits. I'm just being honest. I'm not, I mean, maybe people who are in quality assurance love audits, but when they would say that it's time for an audit, I'd be like, no. And then we say, oh, you have to, what they say, audit ready. And you're like, what does audit ready even mean? So that's what I struggled with when I was a clinical research coordinator, about being audit ready. So thank you as well. So like with the next question, I'm going to dive into this too. How do you ensure compliance with regulatory standards and guidelines in clinical research? Bridget?
Well, I mean, to me, really not even just to me, but the first thing that you need to do is basically make sure that you, first of all, know what the regulatory standards and guidelines are. So if it's the ICH, if it's the FDA guidances, being aware of those. And then from there, taking the next step to create your own policies and procedures, whether that's SOPs, work instructions, workflows that support and that are in like based on the regulatory standards. So that's the number one step, just having your own actual SOPs in place that, are going to help guide your processes in a way that works for your research side or for your institution that you're at.
Thank you. Notorious?
I agree with what Bridget said. It can be done in a few different ways. Like you can have quality people that sit in on the kind of like those small team meetings that you have weekly or bi-weekly, just to, take a listen to see if there's any, patient safety or data concerns that they may need to address. You can do internal audits, kind of like what I mentioned before, where you can audit like the site, you can audit the investigator, you can audit processes like informed consent. So that would be something, to see if you need to create or change your SOPs that were done. You can audit, systems, like if you wanted to use Zoom, making sure that you have all the regulations and guidelines in place to be able to use that to collect any data.
And so what are the key components of a comprehensive quality assurance program in clinical research?
That's a big question. I think I would probably say resources, of course. You have to have the people to be able to carry out this system. There are quality management tools you can put in place, like SOPs, work instructions. Then you can do any kind of checklist, plans, reports, making sure that you're looking at like essential binders, like the ISF or TMF for a study, making sure that you have change control procedures to ensure that you document each step if it's a handover of a project or even just creating a new SOP, being able to identify what's the difference between those. And I would say some kind of like, I guess, quality kind of stepping in before a study begins sometimes to kind of identify and address any pitfalls that may happen to come up with mitigation plans. And I would say definitely also like some kind of issue management where you can escalate things appropriately and create those kappas and deviation plans as necessary.
What about you, Bridget?
Well, so also, I mean, quality is such a huge area within research that, as Notorious kind of listed out all of the different tools and resources that you can use to ensure that you have good quality in your studies, you also have to just think about like what is actually happening on your study. So we've got different functions like data management. Okay, so how are we going to make sure that all the data that we're collecting is accurate and it's done properly? It could be down to something as, we have an ECRF, and who is putting that in place? Does it have all of the different endpoints, all of the different, piece of information that we need to collect from a study? Okay, our adverse event reporting, do we have all of the steps in place to make sure that we can collect our adverse events? I mean, it just really touches into so many different parts that it really does take kind of like intention on the front end, you really want to make sure that you have that like framework set up ahead of time, before the study starts, so that you can really kind of have quality components of each and every part of your protocol, down to like regulatory, to the, study conduct. Like it really just is a very kind of involved process that, spans every different aspect of the study.
It sounds like you really need to be detail oriented to be in quality assurance. So I'm sure that is probably one of the skills. And I know that I'm just throwing this in there. So for anyone else, what other skills would you say, someone, who's interested in quality assurance, what kind of skills would someone need in order to really be successful in this role?
I think so I would say that, I really like quality assurance because it is one of those roles that is not kind of like just front and center when people think about research, but it does have a way of being like one of the most impactful roles. I think a really good skill to have is kind of have like a core strength of like an educator, being able to really like take complicated topics like the regs and really kind of just break it down into easy to understand ways, and being able to explain things in a very simple way that people can understand. Because, we all, seen the regs before. They're really not as specific necessarily as you would like. There's a lot of gray area, but really being able to be that kind of person who can be like, okay, this is what they say. How does that translate to what I'm doing at my site? And also, how can I explain this to other people in a way that makes it easy for them to understand it? So I would say being able to educate folks is a core skill set that you would want to have in quality assurance. You said being detail oriented. What else, Notorious? I'm sure there's a ton.
I think you have to be a people person as well, because you're going to have a lot of interaction with different departments, because there are different components of making sure that the research is safe for the patients as well as the data. So you'd be interacting with all sorts of teams: legal, clinical operations, of course, data management, even sometimes business development, because they're usually the ones that, are getting these new clients that need to then come in and audit your company to make sure that it can do what they need them to be able to do. So I agree with those skills. And I probably would also add like being able to have some critical thinking skills, because like Bridget said, GCP is it's like, we suggest you do this, but there is no clear pathway on how you should do it. And so sometimes it's very combative, especially when you come across people that's been in research for so long. They think, a DOA log, it looks the same everywhere. It doesn't. Like, some people list tasks, some people don't. Some people have initials, some people don't. Some people, sign each line, some people don't. And so being able to identify that all of these can be a way of being able to satisfy this requirement, and then you address the issue, and then you like Bridget said, you put out that training to make sure that those issues don't roll out again.
Yeah, and that's so true. Just, I literally had that situation very recently where it's like people really just want QA to be like, tell us X, so that we know if anybody comes from the outside and comes here, we're not going to get a fine. And it's just like, that's really not how it works. There's more than one way to accomplish the goal, pretty much, as long as you say this is how we're going to do it, and you have a rationale that makes sense. Pretty much like 90% of the time you should be golden. And it's just kind of sometimes hard to really like convince people of that, or to really assure people that that is really actually good enough. And so really being able to kind of, I guess, have the people skills to really kind of work with people and really try to understand, their, maybe, I guess, fears or their, anxiety about, making sure that they are doing things the right way, but really also trying to just, have the common sense and have, I guess, critical thinking skills to really be able to say, okay, what you're doing does sound as though it would be okay, but, there's always that possibility that, if FDA or whomever comes to take a look at this, it may not be good enough, but we will be able to, kind of recover from that, or do what we need to do at that point in time. So, we can only just do what we can do. And I find like that's a really, a lot of times that's a really kind of tough, I think, perspective for people to understand when they're working with QA. They really just want to hear, no, tell me what to do and I'm going to do it. And it's like, no, I need you to tell me how your processes work, how things flow in your department, so that I can help you come up with, the policies that you will be able to defend when somebody from the outside comes in and asks you, why are you doing this, or why didn't you do that?
Yeah, you're definitely going to need thick skin too, because your quality assurance, and people typically will see you as kind of like the police. They won't come and tell you issues when they happen. They'll even fix the issue and still don't even want to tell you that it happened. And then it leaves out the opportunity for QA to step in and make sure that the other studies aren't having that same issue. And that's part of that, being able to communicate with every department and, building that relationship where they don't see you as the police and they do feel comfortable coming to share if there are some issues going on with them.
So pretty much dot your I's and cross your T's, everyone, because QA. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Andrika. And before I do that, I just want to make sure that you guys stay to the end, because we have a prize that we are going to announce at the end. So you have to stay to the end in order to find out. So Andrika, take it away.
You know what? I normally know everything, Danielle, and I'm often always happy when I'm surprised by your announcements too. So I'm going to stay to the end, of course. Okay, so Bridget, you kind of touched upon this earlier, but we do know that data is really key in research. But through a quick Google search, you can see that there's been rare instances of data being fraudulent within the clinical research industry. So I kind of want to change my question and ask you, maybe from a patient's perspective, how can you ensure them that the data that's being collected is accurate?
I mean, it's so funny that you bring this up, because I think last week I was just reading a story where a research coordinator was fabricating a whole bunch of data and got like debarred from research. I really want to say she got sentenced to jail, I want to say. But I mean, I just would really be interested to see what the quality assurance department looked like at that institution where she was at, because there's just really no good excuse for something like that to happen in a situation where they have a quality, a culture of quality. Because from the outset, before a study even takes place, you really want your quality assurance department to be, actually, let's even back up before that. When people are hired, like at many of the institutions that I've worked at, when I've worked in the quality role, I am responsible for the onboarding, the training of research staff. I am teaching them best practices. We're looking at the regs together. And so if you start with, putting quality in place from the very beginning to when people are just even coming onto the team, you already have the opportunity to kind of like guide them and teach them the right way to do things. And so if you're doing that, coupled along with ongoing trainings, ongoing educations, assuring that people have like the proper, did they do their HSP training? Did they do their informed consent training? Like that's the level of, I think, oversight that quality assurance has underneath the role, that you should be making sure that all the way from the personnel to the processes, everything is done correctly. You would never get to the point where, or should never get to the point where, patients have to question whether or not, the proper things are taking place in the study that they're a part of. They should just be worrying about getting better or kind of healing from their condition, and not even have to come in a question of, does the site staff even know what they're doing, or are they, doing things properly?
Right. Thanks, Bridget. Anything to add there, Notorious?
Of assuring that the patient, that their data is correct. I don't know.
Not that their data is correct, but just ensuring, like, if a patient or potential participant, because that's what we use here, were to go and wanted to enter into a clinical trial, and they go and do a quick Google search and see that data was, falsified, it may deter them from joining a clinical trial. So I just want to make sure that they understand that patient safety is our number one priority. So maybe from a data perspective, how are we ensuring that the data that is collected is accurate, right? Because then this goes into, the research of the drug or the device, right?
Yeah, then it becomes a patient safety issue, especially if you're making up data saying that, it's safe, and we see that the true participants there aren't safe and they're reporting all these issues, yet your, pseudo patients are not having any issues going on. So yeah, it definitely can cause a drug to be approved that should not have made it to market. So I guess you would, I mean, to reassure them that their data is collected and it's safe, I mean, that should have been a part of the informed consent process, detailing the risk and benefits of participating in the study, who would have access to their stuff and for what reason they would have that access. But we also would need to internally monitor, which is what, we do as quality assurance. We conduct those systemic audits that can happen. And I saw somebody in the comments was saying like, did they even monitor the studies? Well, monitors make mistakes as well. They don't know, all the rules and regulations that they should follow, especially once we moved into kind of this DCT era. Like I just did an internal audit, and we found a bunch of things because we got handed over a new study. And so we found a bunch of things that CRA had never even been on site. They do not have a certified copy process, so they've never even seen the original consent, which means they should not have ever had access to the source data, because they cannot prove that that person did give them permission to have access to their data. So little things like that, ensuring them that, there is a quality assurance position. They do have access to contact the IRB directly if they have an issue, as well as having someone internally at that site to be able to contact directly if there's an issue from, the PI or the staff as well.
Thank you, Notorious, for elaborating on that. So as a project manager, risk management is something that we do every day and throughout the study. So what strategies do you employ to identify and mitigate potential risk to clinical trials?
I like to do pre-conduct overviews of studies where you kind of like look at the protocol, go through kind of like a mock full out what will happen in the visit, go through each visit, time the visit so that you know the expectations of how long each step is and whether or not you can start to do other things while you're waiting on one thing to happen. Like if you needed to coagulate blood for 45 minutes, you can spend that 45 minutes, now working with the patient to gather any e-diaries or any other reported outcomes that you need to gather. And then from there, you're able to identify like all the pain points that may happen. Like if you needed to ship out drug, how long did it take to reach them? Were you able to control the temperature to make sure that the IMP arrived safely? Did the nurse, was she able to make it there on time as well? Just all of those little hiccups, kind of like seeing them happen and then putting something in place before it can happen real live.
Thanks, Notorious. Anything to add there, Bridget, about mitigating potential risks?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that there are different ways of looking at the study operations from just the standpoint of like the parties involved. So for example, is this a new sponsor that you're working with for the first time? How long has the company been in existence? How many different sites do you have in a study? These all might be different criteria that might make the, kind of risk level of the study be one that you might want to keep a closer eye on. Are we trying to enroll, 100 patients versus maybe like 10 patients? Participants? Does that make a difference on, how tightly we need to like pay attention to like, a study that's a high enroller versus a slow enroller? Like there's just a lot of different criteria, and there are different kind of tools and resources out there that you could use. I know SQA, which is the Society for Quality Assurance, has a lot of, if you're a member, it's actually like a really very reasonable, I think it's under $200 for a membership.
Nice.
They have a lot of different resources that you could use to help you kind of plan your audits, but really just kind of thinking about not only just the study conduct itself, but kind of like all of the circumstances surrounding it. Is the investigator new to research? How long have they been, a research investigator? How many other studies do they have going on at the same time? Like these are all the sorts of things that, in quality we have in the back of our minds when we are making the determination of, who needs to be audited and when, because there are audits where there's something going wrong and people are going to want to come in and check and see what's going on. But then in the background, there are audits that should be going on at all times that are just kind of checking routinely to make sure that things are going well. But with limited resources, sometimes you still have to prioritize and say, okay, I maybe can't look at 10 studies this year, but I can look at 3. Okay, how do I tell which 3 those are? And so those are just kind of some of the things to keep in mind when you're thinking about risk and thinking about ways to kind of like maximize the amount of like human resources that you have and still try to keep your research program running properly and at a high level of quality.
Thank you. And that sort of leads me to the next question about new sponsors and new PIs. So how do you ensure that investigator and the site staff are adequately trained to conduct clinical trials? Notorious, I'll give that to you first.
So usually before a study starts, they have kind of that site qualification audit. So during those audits, we usually go in, we'll identify who the PI is supposed to be, we'll check their training credentials, see if they have GCP certificates, make sure that they aren't debarred from doing any research, especially if it involves IMP. You'll also check like their training logs to make sure that they have trained accurately on the study and know the protocol. If it is a drug study, make sure that they signed a 1572, they don't have any conflicts of interest going on. You would also check, make sure that they have their investigator site file developed and ready. You would go through their SOPs to make sure that they have processes in place that will conduct the study according to the protocol and that there aren't any issues, in their SOP versus what the protocol says. And if so, help them, write out a planned deviation to accommodate that project. Making sure that they are IRB approved, of course, to even do the study. Just kind of like those little things you want to go in and check.
Thank you. Anything to add, Bridget?
Yeah, pretty much same thing that Troy said. I mean, just making sure that, if this is a cardiology study, okay, is the PI a cardiologist? I mean, that would probably be important. Maybe the sub-Is could, be other specialties that kind of like support cardiology, but, just kind of common sense things like that, making sure that stuff just makes sense when you look at it. And that when I say makes sense, it just needs to be something that you can defend if FDA or whomever else comes to ask you, well, why did you do this? Make sure you have a explanation or a rationale that can, kind of like pass the, test of, we knew what we were doing and we did this intentionally. Not that, we either didn't think about it or it's just something that, we're doing, but we don't really have a good, solid reason of why that's, how we're, the research staff or the investigators that we're using. So that's what I would.
Thank you, ladies. All right, Courtney, I'm handing it over to you.
Thank you, Andrika. Okay, so I am fairly new to clinical research, and I just so happen to be on a team that is going through and kind of helping some of the sites get through some of their data issues to go through an interim analysis. So can you please break down for us the process of auditing clinical trial sites, the criteria used to access their performance? Bridget, I'll start with you.
Sure. I mean, it's kind of a big one. And I also kind of wanted to mention before, there are lots of different types of audits. So there is, kind of like a site audit. There's also like vendor audit. So who are we going to use as, a vendor for the study? There's systems audit. So if we're going to be using DocuSign for like maybe e-consenting, how do we make sure that that's, so there's all different types of audits, but probably the most common one is just like a site audit where you're just simply coming in. You're looking at the data, making sure that the study procedures and the protocol are being followed, and that all of the data that the protocol says needs to be collected has been collected. And so a lot of times, in the olden days when I started working, we would actually just go on site and go look through the study binders, have the copy of the protocol right there. Ahead of time, QA is always going to have access to the protocol and read it, look at the different versions of the protocol, because you have to be able to tell like, okay, maybe in the previous version, we were collecting XYZ assessments, but in the new IRB approved version, we're doing something different. You have to be able to, in your mind, keep that straight at the different time points. But it's really just a matter of just looking at the data and really just, sometimes you might do, it's very rare that you'll do like 100% of the data. Sometimes there are different formulas that you can calculate. I'm gonna look at 10% of the subject records. I'm gonna look at, 15%. If everything is clear, maybe on the first 5, then, I could stop there. But it really is just getting down and dirty in the weeds, detail oriented, and looking at the data. Okay, so here's the eligibility criteria. You had to have, these 5 criteria, but you couldn't have these. Okay, I'm looking at their medical record and I'm making sure to see, did it match? And so it is a very manual, can kind of be a tedious process. You also want to look at like endpoints, are people reaching the survival endpoints that are listed in the study? Are they coming to visits on the proper amount of times? If there's an e-diary, are they filling it out to whatever level of completion that the protocol states? If it says, 70% of the visits need to be, the e-diaries for these visits need to be filled out, are they doing 50%? Are they doing 10%? It's just very methodical and very organized and detail oriented. And that's kind of like the traditional, I would say the traditional site visit. You also look at regulatory. Are they submitting their IRB reviews on time? If it's an FDA, like IND study, are they submitting things to FDA at the regular, expected time points? So it can be very, I guess, tedious, but I kind of like that because it's like you have the two aspects of it. The one, you're in front of people and you're presenting the information and you're educating, but then you also can kind of be in the background and really kind of like just get down in there and really kind of figure out, what's going on at a very like basic level. And so that to me, I think is also really, if that's the sort of thing that you like to do, it can be like a really rewarding part of the job.
Awesome. Notorious, do you have anything to add to that?
I would just say it all starts, I guess, kind of with the audit plan. So you'd go in, write down what your scope is that you are wanting to look at, your reasons behind why you picked that certain thing to look at, identify any limitations that you may have when conducting that audit, look at the processes that, the site is following, making sure that kind of like what Bridget said, that the information that we say we're going to do in the protocol is actually being done and that it's being done consistently. You want to make sure that they're following like Alcoa principles or good documentation practices, that they aren't leaving, data blank. And if it is blank, that we know that either the participant refused to answer versus they just didn't see the question. Like making sure you have basically what Danielle was saying, you're crossing all of your T's, dotting your I's. We just want to make sure you have everything buttoned up, ready to go in case the FDA walks in, because they don't have to announce, when they want to come in. They can come in for calls. They can come in just because they're ready. They can come in because the sponsor decided to submit, and they don't always tell you. So you just have to always be ready. And then you want to go ahead and identify whatever issues that you did come across, issue any CAPA so that they don't happen again, and then kind of transfer that learning knowledge to ensure that everybody else is aware what happened and what new plan is in place. And that can involve just re-education, that can involve, creating a new SOP or making the ones you have more robust to follow those guidelines.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm not quite up to speed on how quality assurance actions work, but I would guess that when you go into these sites, you're looking for things that are normal nuances regarding specific types of trials or focus towards that specific site, because sometimes you do have sites who do have certain issues that are ongoing issues. So how do you handle certain deviations or non-compliances identified during quality assurance activities? And Notorious, since we're already talking, I'll let you go ahead and start with that.
So usually you'll either raise kind of some kind of quality issue, or issue management is what my company likes to call it. And it's kind of like a triage system. You kind of raise something that you think might be an issue. You fill out, all the information related to what happened in that issue, kind of, identifying what happened, what impact it made, when did you notice, what did you notice, what are you going to do to be able to fix this right now? And then what can we put in place, in the future to keep this from happening? And then you want to go ahead and address that issue, make that CAPA. You want to follow it through, make sure that you check any effectiveness. So if they said that they're going to put a plan in place, to actually check to see if that plan did work now that they have something in place that was supposed to prevent that action. And then if it does, you can go ahead, close out that issue. And usually I like to alert, the rest of the company what happened, and then figure out if there's a change that needs to happen to like a SOP or something so that it doesn't happen again across any other study.
Awesome. Bridget, anything that you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I think the main thing for me is that, any non-compliance or deviation should be handled promptly. Like the longer you let it play out and the longer you let it build up, it's just like the worse that it gets. So as soon as You notice that, and that's why it really helps, I think, to have a really good relationship with your study team ahead of time, because you want people, when something is going wrong, they're like, okay, you know what, let me reach out to QA and get them to help me. You don't want to be finding out about it like a month from now, like when the monitor comes and then, the sponsor's like, what happened? And then, QA really needs to be kind of like an internal, like first line of defense, working with the study team. So if a deviation is happening, through the corrective action, preventive action process, otherwise known as CAPA, that really is an opportunity to work with a study team and really kind of, what I like to do is just have them kind of just walk me through, like, okay, so what is it that you're doing? Tell me how you, like, let's say, are consenting a patient. Like if we had a participant that, got on the study without signing consent, I'd be like, okay, so walk me through a visit. Like, how do you do your consenting? Because I just want to see in their own words what they're doing. And then a lot of times, just having people explain things to you, their processes, helps you to kind of identify some of the gaps that are happening. And from there, you can work with them to maybe kind of come up with corrective actions, which are actions that would help to fix what has gone wrong. Preventive actions are when you are putting something in place that's going to keep a problem from happening. So both of those are like kind of different things in your tool belt that if you get an understanding of what is happening at the site level, you can kind of work with them to try to do things that will, get the study back on track and keep deviations from happening. But they're only as helpful as if you find out about it early. I can't stress that enough. If you're a coordinator or if you're like a site staff, a PM, and stuff is going off the rails, like you really don't do yourself any favors by trying to hide it. Especially from quality assurance, because I mean, they should be a part of your team, a part of your company. They're there to help you. They're not there to like punish you. So it just makes everybody look better if we can just kind of like take care of it in-house before it gets to the point where like the sponsor or, even worse, like FDA or somebody has noticed. So definitely as early as possible, and then just working with the team to try to figure out what's causing the problem and how can we solve it.
Nice, nice. Okay, so you gave us an example of how you all would identify gaps at the trial sites. So once those gaps are found, and I'm guessing retraining happens after that, what are some measures would you take to promote continuous improvement in clinical research quality? Bridget?
So, I mean, I think I mentioned it before, but just creating a culture of quality just from the beginning, quality assurance. And a lot of times when I've worked in this role, we've been the people that put on continuing education sessions. We'll have kind of like brown bags or, ground rounds, whatever you want to call it, lunch and learns, just, taking different topics from the regulations and really just trying to educate people on how that applies to their job. Also, being the one to implement like quality management systems that really kind of help the work to flow a little smoother and not be as manual, because a lot of times if you can kind of automate processes, it just kind of helps the study team to be able to follow things. I like to have like an open door policy. If teams or functional areas feel like they kind of don't really know how to address something, I want them to feel like they can come to me ahead of time and we can kind of talk it through. Not because I'm going to tell you exactly what to do, but I could be a sounding board to kind of help you think through your processes and make sure that what you're trying to do, makes sense. And then also, of course, the typical stuff is just, being able to conduct regular routine audits, even when nothing is going wrong. You just always have that presence and you're always kind of just checking, on a regular basis to make sure that, best practices are being followed.
Awesome. Notorious, if you have anything to add, please be my guest.
I agree with Bridget. And then there's also this thing, I think it's called PDCA cycle. It's plan, do, check, act. So you want to kind of build your quality plan, in the trials from the beginning, like Bridget said. You want to implement, the do is, implementing kind of your study risk management strategies, whatever they may be, whether you have a risk-based monitoring, you have, when you're going to go in and check any kind of data for that study, whether you want to do a pre-study, audit to make sure that the PI is even ready, those type of things. And then once you have those, risk strategies implemented, you want to check. So you want to go back and make sure that whatever you put in place, did prevent, any potential issues with patient safety or data integrity. authority. And then from whatever you learned by doing that, little check that you did, you then take that back and see if there's anything that needs to be adjusted, or there's a learning opportunity to share with either within that team or across the company to prevent it from happening again. And you just keep doing that circle over and over for continuous improvement.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies, so very much. And I think at this point, it's time for some questions from the audience, if we have any. Let's see here.
Before we jump in, I just have one question too. I know a lot of people who want to get into quality assurance. What would you say, is there any training that is specifically directed towards someone getting into quality assurance, or what is there anything out there in the industry?
Yeah, so I want to start off saying that me and Bridget have vastly different years of experience. So I've only been in QA for about 2.5 years now. So I'm relatively very new to quality. The way that I was able to get in is I kind of started off as an in-house CRA for our company. And then from there, kind of like what Bridget said, I worked really close with our quality team. So any issue that I found, I raised it up to them. So if I found that, one particular site was enrolling a bunch of ineligible patients or had a high screen failure rate, I would alert quality. We'd come up with some plan and we'd carry it out. And so when they had a position open, she saw, that I was working with her, that I already knew how to kind of do the auditing, and she kind of asked if I wanted to apply. I applied, and that's how I got in. But there are things that you can do to kind of learn. So when I got laid off from my last company, I went on LinkedIn and kind of like blasted out that I was looking for a mentor. And from there, I found out about what Bridget said, the Society of Quality Assurance. They actually have a mentoring program, if you're a member there, that you can get paired up with people that either have the same experience as you, or you can choose someone that has a different type of quality assurance experience than you. And when I say different experience, I'm a GCP quality assurance person. So I focus on good clinical practices. You can also do good manufacturing practices, good lab practices, and those are specialties within quality as well. And as well as, computer system validation, those type of things as well, to make sure that the software and tools that we're using are compliant with the regulations and guidelines. So you can be in any of those fields as well. I also signed up with Barnett International that offered a GCP auditing class that basically went through all the ICH guidelines, how they apply in auditing, how to create an audit plan, how to carry that out, how to write reports, make sure that you carry out the CAPA, do the checks, prevent those things from happening. So there are a bunch of tools. And if anybody is looking for any particular, I'll be happy to share what I found with you. Just reach out and let me know.
Well, applause to you, Notorious. I wouldn't be able, if you didn't tell me that it was 2 years or 2.5 years, I would have thought that you had been in quality assurance for a long time. So it's just proof that, if you really want to be successful in your role, if you seek out the information, you'll find it. So thank you for sharing. Bridget, would you like to share?
Yeah, I think Notorious pretty much covered a lot of it. I think a certain part of it too is we all have like different gifts and different kind of ways that, we like to work. My background is I started as a research coordinator. And so for me, it was just always very easy to kind of see like what should be done versus like what was missed. And I think having experience at the site level just really makes it easy for me to, like, when I'm dealing with sites, especially, to be able to kind of find out like gaps in their processes that are contributing to errors and deviations, because I understand like the demands of, being at the research site and really trying to get your job done while dealing with, a whole bunch of participants. You're dealing with the PI, so I would definitely say that if you have a background as a research coordinator, that comes very much in handy with being in quality assurance, because it's like you can just flip the other side and pretty much tell what people are dealing with. If you are, I think a research coordinator, like that is like probably like the number one training ground for being in quality assurance. But you also really have to be a people person, which I think Notorious mentioned earlier. You really got to be able to work with people. You have to be able to have that kind of personality that can really clearly articulate yourself in the face of sometimes, you know, I guess I hate to say hostility because it's like it's work. Why are we being so hostile? But you know, defensiveness, maybe, you know, somebody who can really kind of put people at ease and really work together across a bunch of different areas. It may not be, you know, like for example, I've done pharmacy audits before. I'm not a pharmacist. You know, I don't have the schooling that they have, but I can read the protocol and I can do math and I can calculate how much the dosage is supposed to be. So if the dosage is not that, then you know, how can I ask the question in a way that, you know, helps me to understand, you know, what's going on and, you know, help them understand that, okay, we might have an issue here. So there really is a lot of like soft skills, I think I would say, but also just that background knowledge of how is the protocol, what does the protocol say needs to happen? But then also, as Notorious mentioned, there are lots of different areas of QA. So computer system validation, you know, maybe if you have an IT background, that might be an area that you want to get into because that experience that you have in IT and how different applications work, you know, could give you a leg up on, you know, figuring out like, is DocuSign Part 11 compliant and doing all the different checks and tests that need to be done in order to make sure that that's the case. That's a completely different skill set than somebody who has like a clinical QA background. So there's lots of different ways to get in. Just I think that's kind of similar to a lot of different things in research, but just having those people skills and having the knowledge and just kind of that motivation to really learn from others and be able to work with others, I think is something that, you know, if you have that, that's at least a really good starting point to go from.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
I
Bri-
definitely agree with you, Bridget. There are a lot of transferable skills. So though I've only been in quality 2 years, I have a bench background in research where I did, you know, hands-on research at first. So that gave me a lot of analytical skills, critical thinking skills that I can now transfer over because I was so detail oriented. Of course, when you know you're in research and you're at the bench, you can only change one thing at a time and you have to write everything down in your lab book. So that helped me, you know, now move into this QA role where I'm meticulously analyzing the data, making sure that, you know, if you put 1.0, that it needs to be 1.0 all the time, not 1.03 on this next patient. Like just making sure that you're consistent across all measures.
And speaking of transferable skills, we have a question in the chat. Helenia is in quality assurance for the food and beverage industry, and she's wondering how she can switch into the clinical research quality assurance.
I would definitely say start to gather some of that good clinical practice experience so you can do some of those free trainings that are offered online, at least to show that you are interested in clinical research. I would even, the way that I originally got into clinical research, I got a master's in clinical research. That was my second master's. And then I ended up just shadowing. I reached out to a few different departments within my hospital and asked them if they would be okay with me just shadowing for their clinical research. And so that was how I first got introduced to it. So I would suggest, you know, just kind of beefing up some of that training, looking at the skills that you can apply because you are already doing some of the quality assurance measures. It's just a matter of how you can apply those guidelines and regulations that you already know towards what you want to move forward into.
Yeah, and definitely, because I mean, FDA, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they actually govern, you know, is the Food and Drug, you know, association. So you are probably following a lot of the similar guidances and things that govern our industry as well. And I actually worked with a young lady at a previous institution who had that same background. She worked for a company that did, I think it was some kind of grains. And so she was able to kind of take that regulatory experience and move over into clinical research regulatory and quality assurance, just based off the strength of already, you know, being familiar with those standardized guidelines, you know, underneath FDA. So sometimes you kind of have to spell it out for people. So getting that clinical research experience, like Notorious mentioned, would be good, but you definitely have the transferable skills and the background knowledge, you know, on paper to be able to make a very easy transition into research.
And that's similar to my background and how I got into clinical research. And I'll drop this in the chat as well. Going on clinicaltrials.gov, cold calling clinical sites that are near you, asking them, can you shadow? You will be amazed with the response that you receive from the clinical trial sites. A lot of times these sites are not advertising that they're looking for help. So if you reach out to them, they're like, perfect, great, someone, wants to help us. And that can be an opportunity to get you into the clinical research industry. I know that it can seem very scary to cold call, but these people, a lot of times the sites are looking for people who want to help them. And so if you reach out to them, don't be afraid to tell someone what you need. And you will be surprised by someone like, okay, this is what you want to do? Okay. And they will say yes to you. And all it really takes is one yes. And that can be your foundation that you need in order to get started in the industry. Being able to tell someone about your quality assurance background and how that measures up to a quality assurance role in the clinical research industry. So another thing that I would suggest is to start looking at those quality assurance roles in the clinical research industry and look for the comparisons between your current job and the quality assurance roles. And so when you're talking to people, you can connect the dots. I think a lot of times, especially in the industry, what has happened with people is struggling with connecting the dots from their role and the clinical research role that is transferable. So if you can do, a lot of that with connecting the dots and making sure that that information is transferred into your resume, that will help you when you start to apply for these positions as well. And in addition to that, I'm sure Bridget and Notorious are open to you reaching out to them, and contacting them. So now you have 2 quality assurance buddies. So get on LinkedIn, send them messages, you got to do your homework. So if you want to get into clinical research industry, you should be sending them a message tonight, probably right now. So that's what I recommend. If you want to get in, here are the people, here are the experts that can help you. So yes, be proactive. Any
And
other
I'm just
questions?
putting my LinkedIn in the chat if anybody wants to reach out, because I've actually mentored somebody who was able to get a quality assurance job after working as a research coordinator when I was a mentor for Black women clinical research. And, she really enjoys the role. And it's just, another one of those, I know a lot of people want to be a CRA. Normally quality assurance, Notorious, I think you're traveling a lot right now, but I work remotely, 100% remotely for a company halfway across the country. I could get into all of my systems, pretty much online, don't have to travel. So it's one of those jobs where it can kind of pretty much be done anywhere. And it's not one that requires a lot of travel or even being in front of patients or participants, because you're not even really working directly with them. So that's also something to consider, the kind of lifestyle that you want and the kind of career that you want. And if it's something where you need to be kind of in one spot or more stable, not a lot of travel, it's definitely something I would recommend.
And it's a safe bet for a company. If you have a company that has a quality assurance department, quality assurance is going to be the last one to shut down everything. They have to make sure that the data that was collected got sent over properly, make sure that all patient ends are tied up. So if your company go out of business, you will still have a job because you have to close everything down. So it's a good, solid career in clinical research. And yes, I am traveling right now, but it's only because I'm doing internal audits. So I'm trying to see where my monitors went wrong at the site level as well. So overall, like Bridget said, I do work remote, and I work for a company that's based in China. So all my other counterparts are on like a 12-hour ahead of me. So I'm pretty much by myself trying to coordinate everything with the US.
Yeah.
So question, Notorious, what percentage are you traveling?
So I just started this job and I don't think it's supposed to be like this all the time. So my first week, I was already preparing for an audit. My second week, I went and did 3 audits at 2 different sites in 2 different states. This week I'm on board. And so I have no idea. My next time I'm flying out that I know for sure is in August. So maybe once a month I might, but right now there have been quality issues in the US. So that's why I'm doing a lot of heavy kind of digging right now so we can get it controlled and issue those preventative actions.
Okay. Wow. They made sure you hit the ground running.
Yeah.
On your first week. you traveling before you did onboarding.
Right.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
While we're ready for questions, I did kind of want to say one last thing. I mean, really, to me, when I think about quality, I know I said it before, but it really is the foundation of research, because when you think about it, the whole point of everything that we're doing and all of these studies over, the years, decades, however long it takes, is to really end up with a data set of information from which people can make generalizable, predictions about how the medicine is or is not going to work. We have to be able to have good data in to get a good understanding out of it. And so when you don't have quality data, things are going wrong all throughout the study. It's basically almost to me like you've just wasted all of that good time and energy and resources, money all along the way. So, it really, even though quality assurance is a role that's set aside by itself, there really is a component of that in each and every role that we play, from CRA to investigator, from PI to the research coordinator. Like, we all have a component of quality within each of our jobs. And I really just want to stress that, because, it really kind of just starts with each and every one of us, in how we do our job and having a culture of quality and how we approach our roles, just really kind of builds up on that whole framework of, at the end of the day, is this information that we have, gathered from treating these participants, is it going to, yield to some knowledge that can actually help people, or is it going to be a bunch of junk? And so that's why I really kind of take it seriously when, you see all these kind of different things like in the news where, people are not following different procedures properly. A whole bunch of like really crazy stuff is happening, because at the end of the day, it's really just undermining the quality of the research, which is, what we're here, all to do, in the first place.
Thank you, Bridget. And I see we are at the hour. So these are some of my final thoughts, and I'll get some final thoughts before we announce our giveaway. I'll do the final thoughts. So these are my takeaways. Don't hide from QA. They will find you. Do not try and cover up your mistake. If you made a mistake, you might as well just go ahead and just tell them, and just, don't, it's worse for them to find it later on down the line. So don't hide from QA. A QA is not the police. They are your friend. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And, they always say, what is audit ready? So I really feel like Bridget and Notorious let us know what does it mean to be audit ready, and, to, like we said, dot your I's, cross your T's. So that's what I wanted to share. Does anyone else want to share any final words? Yes, Jasmine said, we are your friends.
We try to be. Don't test us, but no, I'm just joking.
Notorious, anyone want to share any last things?
Just want to thank everybody for coming and allowing us to have this space to communicate with you. And then, like, as you said earlier, if you did have any questions and you wanted to take them offline, you can feel free to reach out to me through LinkedIn.
Yeah, same here. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
And make sure you drop your LinkedIn URL in the chat as well, everyone, so we can connect. Okay, so you guys have made it to the end. Congratulations. You have stayed. So everyone that is here, I'm trying to think the best way to do this. Notorious was so gracious to offer a gold membership to one of our lucky members that is on the call. So Notorious, maybe I'll let you pick it out. No, you don't want to? Okay. Well, raise your hand if you do not have a membership on the app, and we will randomly select you so that you can become a paid member. If you are not on the app, raise your hand so that way we can see who you are. Is that everyone? Few more seconds to raise their hand if they are not on the app. And thank you again, Notorious, for this.
Oh, you're welcome. This is just my way of, giving back where I can. I don't even have access to the app, so y'all better use it. Tell me what's going on.
I say you should have came on the app then.
I be so busy. I be trying to, like, if I'm gonna do the subscription, I gotta have the time to do it. So I was giving myself time to onboard so I can join it.
Okay, let's see. I'm a randomly, I think six hands
I'm
that are
putting their
raised.
names into this random selector thing.
You did? Okay, thank you. I was about to just I was about to say 6 hands raised, and I was just about to pick a random number. Okay. So I'll let you do it, Andrea.
I don't think we even shared like salary ranges. I don't know if that's appropriate to share.
Yeah, go ahead. Of course, we got to share salaries, because if we don't share it, then nobody else will.
When I first started, and I moved over to clinical quality, I think I was making 107.5. When I
What?
got promoted, I made 140.
And that's
And
an
then,
industry, I think, is
yeah,
important to do too, because academic
yeah.
is not.
Yeah, I'll
Right.
make that clear. So I was in biotech at first, and now I'm at a CRO. And at the CRO level, I make 170 something other. I can't remember the last number. Maybe 174, I think.
Let me get in quality.
Yeah. And
I
is
did
that
not.
with direct reports, or because you don't have direct reports to you right now?
No,
Notoria?
it's
Yeah.
just me.
I did
So I'm
not
pretty
know
similar
that.
to that. I do have direct reports though, but starting out in an academic medical center, just doing QA with just coming in. I wasn't a coordinator when I got the job, but I had worked for like the IRB. I think I was making like 70, 80. You're definitely making more than a research coordinator, less than a CRA. However, it just depends on, kind of like, what you want from your career and whether you're going to be in industry or in academia, but it's definitely an area where you can definitely have a really great salary, and then also, really make an impact. That's the one thing I really like about it. I feel like I really am making a real impact on my organization with my input.
And sorry if I spelled anybody's name wrong.
Oh, congrats.
Yay. Let's see. Congratulations, Joni. That's it. Joni Hayes. Okay, so Joni Hayes, send me a message and we will get you set up in the app. So thank you again, everyone. This has been great. I did not know that quality assurance people, y'all out here like that. The salary form that we have, I'm not sure if quality assurance is represented. Please contact me again on LinkedIn. That's Danielle Mitchell. And please feel free to reach out if you are interested in quality assurance. Reach out to Bridget, reach out to Notorious. Don't be scared. Send a message, let them know that you joined the quality assurance meeting here with Black women in clinical research.